Welcome to Festool TV, I'm Phil. Today I'd like to give some information on working with the KS60 to cut compound angles, but also working with something called the angle finder as well. And with the angle finder we can use this for working with internal and also external angles. And we can find the angle, but the machine can do the rest of the work for us. So working with the KS60 on the right hand side of the saw, for example, means we can cut compound angles 20 millimeters thick at 115 millimeters in width. But the example that I'll give you is working on the left hand side of the saw with thicker material. We need to make a couple of changes to the saw before we begin. So the fences on the right and the left hand side of the machine can be removed. And because of the length of the timber, it means we can move the bed extension to the right hand side. If we undo the front handle, we can then bring the saw over to the 60-degree position, and this will then lock itself in the correct point at 60 degrees, and then we can lock this off. The next stage is to bring the head of the saw over, and then this is how we can achieve our compound angle. So with the handle at the back, we can undo this. So at the moment, I can push the saw away from me, but not over to the right-hand side. So on here, where this green button is, it means if we depress this, we can then bring the saw over to this position, and now it will come down to 45 degrees. And of course, the next stage is to lock this off into position. So now with the saw set up, we can then put this onto the bed of the machine. And the big advantage of working with the shadow line on the KS60 is that I can now know exactly where my pencil line is, which means we can trim the material away. But of course, the material needs to be held securely every time you use a saw. So I can use a clamp, and with the hole on the back of the bed, it then means that I can hold this securely into position. So now I can move the timber left or right hand side, depending on where the cut needs to be made. So now the clamp can be securely tightened up. And so now in this position, we're ready to make the cut. So working with the KS60 is really simple to cut compound angles at 60 degrees and also beveling over at 45 degrees as well. And we end up achieving a really fine quality cut, which is also extremely accurate, as you would expect from Festool. But we can use the KS60 for a couple of other areas as well, such as working with the angle finder. So I need to put the saw back up into the 90-degree position. So to take the saw back up, we can undo the back handle, and we want to make sure that the saw goes back into the position where it's going to cut down exactly at 90 degrees. So as soon as I bring the head of the saw up, you hear a click, and then it will rest back into that position. And then of course we can tighten up the back handle, undo the front handle, and now we can swing it back around, and then this will click back into 0 degrees. If we undo the side extension, bring this back into position, and then of course the next stage is we can put the fences back on to the back of the machine as well. So working with the KS60 is very quick to set up for cutting angles, but also very quick to reassemble, so we can carry on with any particular type of work that we have planned. So with the angle finder stored on the back of the KS60, and so now when I undo these two sides, we can open up the two wings. So in this position, it means I can go to a corner of a room, for example, and I can push this in, and then I can find the correct angle. We can then tighten this up, and I can take this back to the saw. So for internal angles, this is really simple to work with. But of course, external angles for working with materials such as skirting, it means that we can use the two aluminium profiles to push these forward. Again, I can go to the external corner, we can push this in, and it will settle at the correct angle, and then with the wheel we can lock this off. And now I can go back to the saw because the angle has been found, and of course along this line means we've bisected the angle perfectly. So the KS60, we can now very accurately set this up. So with the lever at the front, we can bring this up and then over to the left-hand side. So now the indentations on the base of the saw won't be used. So the base of the saw can move freely, so I can now set this very accurately to work with. I can put this onto the base of the machine and it's held in that position. So now it's held dead light, so it's now held in exactly the correct position with the kerf line coming along the centre line of this mark here. So the big advantage is I don't need to bisect my own angle, the saw does this for me. So now we can bring this around onto the back fence. And then we can tighten up the handle into position. So now I've bisected the angle, now I've found the correct angle, it's bisected, and then I can work very quickly as well. So working with the KS60 to cut compound angles, but also working with the KS60 to bisect angles with the angle finder is a very simple and easy process. So I hope this helps your understanding of working with the KS60 from Festool, and I'll see you again next time. Thank you.